Hello, it's Jack Bannister here, Head of Sixth Form at Waldegrave School. I'd like to start by saying what a pleasure it has been over the last few days to welcome students back onto the site for the beginning of a new academic year. It's been absolutely fantastic to meet our new Year 12 students and to see the Sixth Form building alive with the presence of young people ready to learn again after such a long absence from school. Part of our procedures at the beginning of a new academic year would ordinarily be to invite parents and carers onto the school site to attend our Key Information Evening. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing restrictions on large gatherings, it's not been possible to conduct the event in person, but I hope that you find this video presentation and the accompanying slides a valuable replacement for that live event. So, the starting point for us as a sixth form is always this vision. It reads, at Waldegrave Sixth Form, our vision is to ensure our students enjoy a love of learning, achieve their aspirations, and feel empowered to become the leaders of and contributors to a better society. This is the reference point that we use when we're planning our lessons, organising our events, offering pastoral care to our students, and it really underpins everything we do. The group of people that are primarily responsible for the implementation of that vision are our sixth form team, who you can see here. So Mrs. Page is the deputy head teacher. She originally set up the sixth form and came up with that vision that we've just seen. I'm now head of sixth form and I'm responsible for the day-to-day running of the whole sixth form. The first port of call for you as parents and carers of Year 12 students is Mr. Stavru, the head of year. Your daughter or son will also have a dedicated form tutor who they see every day. We have our academic and pastoral mentors, Mrs. King and Mrs. Gonzalez, who are experienced teaching assistants who specialise in supporting students at A-level. We have a fantastic admin team of student support officers, headed up by Mrs. Everett, the sixth form manager, who works closely with Mrs. Ridgely, Mrs. Allen and Mrs. Hughes, and they're there really to provide administrative support to myself and the heads of year, but also to provide practical and emotional support to our students as well. A number of other key support staff who work across the whole school but are really valuable to sixth form are our careers advisors, Mrs. Holmes and Miss Mayer, Mrs. Salisbury, who is our Senko in charge of inclusion, and Mrs. DeRose, our exams officer. Thinking about the sort of day-to-day aspects of life for a Year 12 students, lessons are the heart of what we do. Learning really is the most important thing, and these are the expectations that we set out for students in terms of making the most of their lessons. So these are the sort of basic standards of being well prepared, well organised, reliable, and an active participant in lessons that we would hope that parents were able to support by reinforcing at home as well. Another key component of day-to-day life for sixth form students is tutor time. This year, tutor time is taking place from 2:05 until 2:25 every single day. It's compulsory for sixth form students to attend tutor time, and it will be an opportunity for students to meet people outside of their subject areas, to have that sort of pastoral care from their form tutors. It's an opportunity to seek advice and ask questions of their form tutors. And we also have a daily focused activity, the details of which you can see on the right hand side of the slide there. And that's really about helping to foster a positive energy within the tutor group through the fun activities on a Friday, creating a sense of community across the whole of the year group with our briefings on a Thursday, developing sort of independent learning skills and important employability skills through our independent learning and student presentations on Tuesday and Monday respectively, and through PDC on a Wednesday, which you might think of as PSHE as well. We help to cover some really important social, emotional, political topics as well with our students. The final sort of components really of the timetables is work periods. So students in Year 12 are not constantly in lessons throughout the school day. They actually have 12 periods per week on their timetable that are labelled as work periods. And we call them work periods rather than free periods intentionally because students are expected to be using that time productively. Year 12 students have the study base on the ground floor of the sixth form as their primary work area during this time, and they're also able to use empty classrooms within their bubble area for their year group, which is the ground floor and first floor of the sixth form building. Those work periods are really dedicated to the idea of independent learning, and alongside those work periods, students may choose to work in the evenings and at the weekends as well. And the overall goal is that students should be doing 5 hours of independent work per subject every week outside of their timetabled lessons. So that may include homework that's been specifically set by the teacher, that's a very directed task, but it may also be learning that students have identified for themselves and are carrying out. We help students to understand how to conduct independent learning effectively in the following, using the following kind of 4 themes. So we talk to students about preparing for their lessons by pre-reading around the topic, printing out resources that the teacher's giving them access to, reading through textbooks or revision guides, giving themselves a foundation of knowledge and understanding on the topic of the lesson before they arrive at the classroom. We also talk about consolidating learning, and this is reinforcing what they've studied in the lesson by finishing off incomplete tasks, reading back through notes, writing summary notes, highlighting key information, doing more extended reading into the topic to develop a depth of knowledge, and so on. The third area is practice. So this means applying what students have covered in lessons by practicing exam-style questions. So many teachers will give students banks of these questions, but they can also be found in textbooks and revision guides, through past papers. So if it's an essay-based subject and it's sort of impractical for students to write out whole answers, then detailed essay plans can also be a useful form of practice. The final area is revision. Students often say, what's the point of revising now? I'll have forgotten it all by the time we get to the exam. But really, we like to think of revision as building layers of knowledge and understanding over an extended period of time. And we find that that's much more effective, sort of revising as you go, as opposed to leaving it till the last minute. So students every week can be writing summary notes to revise from of the topics they've covered in class over the previous few days, quizzing themselves, explaining concepts and elements of the content to others, including yourselves as parents and carers, as well as doing those exam questions. Something else that does appear on the Year 12 timetable is enrichment. This is 1 period a week on a Wednesday afternoon, and it's a compulsory programme of activities that all Year 12 students participate in. And again, there are no lessons in this time, but again, it's an opportunity for students to enjoy themselves, build friendships with a more varied group of their peers, pursue their wider interests, and develop sort of various passions and skills of theirs. In the autumn term, our focus is on activities run within the school, so recreational sports, subject extension sessions, and so on. We're currently in the process of getting those activities set up, and they'll be launched to students soon. It's been a little bit more tricky than normal with the various restrictions in place, trying to source instructors to come and support us with those activities, and also to get the rooming and the logistics of it right, but that's coming soon. In the spring term, we would usually get students to participate in some form of volunteering. Many would do that within the school, supporting younger students in lessons. Others may choose to do their volunteering out of school with local charities. Again, we understand that the current situation is making things like that quite challenging, so that's something that we'll keep under review as we approach the spring term. In the summer term, the priority is about emotional well-being and academic achievement as we build up to our end of Year 12 exams, and then we utilise our enrichment time to really focus on UCAS and apprenticeships, which is a sort of key element that students need to consider as they get towards the end of Year 12 and progress into Year 13. So those are the various elements of a sort of typical week in the life of a student in sixth form. One of our sort of key policies is about bringing your own device. We do have some Chromebooks and iPads available to borrow in the study base, but our computer sort of resources are stretched quite thinly at the moment because of the way that teaching has had to change in certain subject areas across the school, and because resources aren't easily shared between different year groups at the moment. So we're really strongly advising students to bring their own device if they have one, which they can then use for independent learning during their work periods, and that really guarantees that they have access to the electronic resources that they need. It's also sort of more hygienic as opposed to sharing of resources. But it is the responsibility of students to make sure that they're using that device responsibly and in a way that's appropriate for school, and are taking responsibility for keeping it safe as well. In terms of working from home, it's likely that students will want to complete some portion of their 5 hours of independent learning per subject each week at home. And the best thing that you can do as parents or carers is to try your best you can within the context of your own home to provide a really good working environment, whether that's a desk in the bedroom or a space at the dining table, making sure that students have got access to a computer, reliable Wi-Fi, planners, stationery, textbooks, paper, and so on is really, really important. And we often encourage students to practice something that we call zoning, which is using a separate area of the home for work compared to relaxation and sleep. So many students choose to sort of lie in bed and work, but what we find is that often contributes to students struggling to sleep because they're associating that place that's supposed to be restful with their mind being active and needing to work. We have a number of policies and procedures to support students in terms of their academic achievement in the sixth form. One of those is overtime. There are two different types of overtime. There's study support, and that's intended as a supportive measure whereby students are made to stay for an additional 2 hours after the end of their last lesson of the day. They'll register with us at sixth form reception and then get on with work set by the teacher who's put them into overtime, and then sign out with us again at reception after 2 hours. The other type is supervised overtime, which is more of a sanction and is carried out in a supervised room in quiet conditions. So the purpose of overtime really is to encourage students to make the right decisions in terms of the work that they're doing. So we might put students into study support overtime if they've been absent from school and haven't taken the initiative to catch up on work, or they're not finishing things off that they've started in class, or they're not completing the requisite amount of independent learning. So we're sort of encouraging students to make those positive decisions about their working habits. So you can see some examples here of the kind of reasons that students might be put into each type of overtime respectively, and the details of when those sessions occur. And we have a stepped procedure for students who do not attend overtime when they've been put in it here. So there's an escalation. We don't want it to be a punitive system, but it's important that there's accountability for students and that they understand that they have to engage with this measure as a supportive action. Our assessment and monitoring calendar is another way that we help to support students academically. So in October we'll have our health check monitoring, followed by support meetings for targeted students, and that's a sort of very condensed form of monitoring. We're not giving letter grades out as predictions at that time because staff won't have had enough opportunity to get to know students and understand the level that they're working at, but it's an opportunity for staff to raise early causes for concern so that we can then address those as soon as possible. We have mock exams scheduled for December, and then in January results of those will be published through monitoring. We'll have our parents' evening, which we refer to as PCM, followed by more support meetings. In April/May, depending on the timing of public exams, we'll have our end of year 12 exams, which we treat as quite a formal, full set of exams of sort of 2 papers per subject, equivalent to AS exams. And in May, the results of those go home through monitoring again. You will have heard me refer to support meetings a couple of times there. These are meetings that we have after every monitoring cycle. So teachers can raise students as a cause for concern in any monitoring based on attendance or punctuality, deadlines, and organisation. If a student is a cause for concern in one subject, then the subject teacher or the head of department will put in place sort of interventions as required. If a student's a cause for concern in 2 or more subjects, then there will be a meeting, which is likely to be virtual at the moment, with the head of year, parents, and the student. And the idea of that, again, is to be supportive, and it's about us all working together to make sure that we're aware of the problems that students are facing and that we're working to find solutions to those so they can move forward. A further support system are our academic mentors, Mrs. King and Mrs. Gonzalez. They're available to run small group workshops on particular skills like revision. They can also provide one-to-one support, which might be an individual session just to deal with a particular issue, or they can offer weekly academic mentoring sessions. They're available for drop-in support, so students can go and ask them for help. They're based at sixth form reception, and they can address things like organisation, time management, extended writing, developing subject-specific skills, and so on. So they're a really useful support. We also have our inclusion department, who are primarily working with students who have an EHCP. They also carry out the testing for access arrangements. If your daughter or son does have an EHCP and you've not let us know already, please could you do that as soon as possible so that we can organise the right support from our inclusion team. And really our final sort of form of support is our 16 to 19 Bursary Fund, and this is providing financial aid. If you think that your daughter or son may be eligible, you can contact Mrs. East via the finance email address there, and that can be used as a sort of a way to fund the purchase of textbooks, school trips, so on. So please do get in touch if you think you may be eligible for that. We understand at the moment as well, people's circumstances may have changed due to the effects of the COVID pandemic and the impact that that's had on people's jobs and so on. So please don't hesitate to ask questions. Moving on to some of the key sort of expectations and the policies around them. Attendance is really, really important. Good attendance is really the backbone of academic success. It's getting students into the classroom, and we know this is particularly important after such a long absence of school as well. If students know that they're going to be absent in advance, it's a planned absence, we would ask that a parent or carer emails into the sixth form email address there as soon as possible with the details of the absence so that we can approve it and get the right details onto the registers. If students are absent unexpectedly on a given day due to illness or so on, again, a parent or carer needs to either call the school, email sixth form, or use study bugs, which pops up on the school website, to report the absence by 8:30 every day. We are quite strict with encouraging students to make it into school as much as possible and avoid absence. So just a few of the things that we do not accept students being absent for here: family holidays, driving lessons, very minor illnesses or injuries. Of course, we're all being careful with illnesses at the moment, and if a student's displaying symptoms of COVID, we would obviously want them to stay home. But a little bit of a sniffle in winter, we would expect students to persevere. Social events, interviews for sort of part-time jobs, we don't allow students to be absent for. University interviews, things like that, are a different story. Routine dental or medical appointments that you're able to book yourself, again, we would ask that you choose to do that at the weekend or in the school holidays. We understand that sometimes if a referral is made, you don't have a say over when an appointment occurs. But really, we want students to be in as much as possible. Punctuality is also important. So we're measuring punctuality both in the morning and to all lessons throughout the day. Our rule in the morning is that students need to arrive in time for their first lesson of the day, or by 9:50 at the absolute latest if they don't have a period first thing, a lesson first thing. We do quite frequently sort of get excuses when people are late. Here's some of the classic ones which are not acceptable. And here's some suggestions of how students can try to improve their punctuality as well. So again, we would appreciate your support in perhaps implementing some of these ideas at home. And we have a stepped procedure for addressing poor punctuality as well there. Behaviour is really important in terms of behaviour for learning, so students have to be conducting themselves in such a way that they're able to extract the maximum benefit from their lessons, but also in such a way that we're able to create a safe and purposeful environment for all students in the sixth form. We do track behaviour, and the primary sanction that we have, which can be issued by any member of staff to students, are penalty points. These are the sort of things that penalty points are likely to be issued for. I would say deadlines are the main one, and that has or missed deadlines to be more specific, and that has such a direct impact on learning. It is really, really important that students are avoiding picking up sanctions for that kind of thing. And again, the details of our stepped procedure here. One of our key rules is that students wear their lanyards at all times while they're on the school site. That's really important. They must have the lanyard on around their neck. They must have the ID badge in there with the picture facing forwards, and that's a really important part of our safeguarding procedures. Our sixth form students are a bit older than the other young people on the site. They're also not wearing a school uniform, and so our only way of being able to sort of identify them as people who have permission to be on the site is through their lanyards. So it's really important to ensure the safety of everyone that they wear those. Mobile phones are allowed when students are in the study base, and we know that they can be a valuable learning tool, but they're not allowed to be seen or heard in lessons or around the school site in front of younger students. The exception would be if a teacher allowed students to use them for a specific activity in a lesson. And we also have our dress code as well. And you can see the aims of that there and the details of it here. So that's one of our sort of key rules as well. So moving on from the sort of rules and thinking ahead, UCAS is one of the key focuses of sixth form. That's the name of the University Applications and Admissions process. We normally launch that with Year 12 students in February when we go on a trip to the UCAS exhibition at Brunel. Fingers crossed that we'll still be able to do that, but we'll obviously keep looking at the situation closely and seeing how things evolve over time. UCAS then is a particular focus for Year 12 students once they've returned from their exams in the summer. So throughout June and July, it's something we do a lot of work on. We really strongly advise that everyone submits a UCAS application, even if they don't want to go to university. Submitting the application doesn't cost very much money, it's about £20, and you're not tied into taking up your place. But doing the application helps you to learn how to submit one to a high standard with our support, but it also allows students to keep their options open. It's really not something that students need to be worrying about too much at the moment. The focus at the start of Year 12 needs to be on settling in and building that solid foundation for academic success. The only things that you might consider at the moment in terms of universities is attending any virtual open days that are occurring. You'll probably struggle to find sort of in-person ones at the moment. Virtual taster sessions for particular subjects, any support programs that are out there for really competitive courses, particularly medicine, Oxbridge candidates, and then really for students to build relevant skills and experiences to write about in their personal statement. So students will need to write about what we call supercurricular activities in their application. Those are things that they do that are directly related to the university course they want to apply for, but that go beyond the things they're studying in their A-level subjects. So an example of a supercurricular activity for a student applying for English literature might be that they go away and read some literature that's not on their A-level course, maybe some Chaucer, something very early that's not really covered that commonly in school curriculum. It could be an online course. It's very often further reading, keeping up to date with developments in their chosen field in the news, where possible doing things like work experience and so on. So the sooner that the students can start building up those kind of experiences, the better, so they can really create a bank of useful material to draw on when it comes to writing personal statements and so on right at the end of this year. Emotional well-being is a really crucial focus. These are some of the emotions that you might see at home from your daughter or son. They're certainly the range of emotions that we see on a daily basis in the sixth form, sort of spanning from tiredness to jubilation to fear to anger to sadness and so on. And all of those emotions are absolutely valid and normal. The important thing is that students are talking to you as their parents or carers, to us as the adults looking after them at school, and that they're acknowledging how they feel and then working hard, taking the advice on offer to manage those emotions. Here's a few sort of factors to consider that may be affecting the emotional well-being of your daughter or son. And of course, we know that many of these issues around well-being are likely to be exacerbated by the prolonged absence students have had from school and now having to return to that kind of busy environment and the pressure that they sometimes feel to succeed and do well with us. There's a wide range of people that are there to support your daughter or son if they are struggling in terms of their emotional well-being. From your perspective as parents or carers, if you had concerns, I would suggest contacting the head of year as your first port of call. We really rely on your support as parents with the work that we're doing. There's some suggestions here of how you can offer us your support. It's really important that we help the PTA. They do some really valuable work, make a massive difference to the school. If you're ever wanting to contact a member of staff, please use the sixth form email address that you can see here and then reference the appropriate member of staff in the subject heading. Parents are not permitted to directly email teachers, so if you do that, you may find that you don't get a reply and your queries are much better directed through this sixth form email. So if we were doing this event in person, we would have an opportunity sort of for questions in a live format. Unfortunately, that's not possible here, but if you do have any remaining queries, please do send them in to the sixth form email address and we will endeavour to answer you as soon as possible. Thank you for listening.